Hey guys, I'm so glad to see you again. Tonight, I want to share with you a mysterious story, one that might send shivers down your spine, even as you sit safely in your own room. Imagine this. You live in a small, quiet village, far away from the outside world. Life is peaceful until one foggy night, when a strange bell tolls deep within the forest. From that moment on, everything changes. The village lay hidden in a remote valley, unknown to most outsiders. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, nestled between rolling hills and dense ancient woods that had stood for centuries. The people lived simply, following traditions that stretched back further than anyone could remember. They were bound by one unusual rule passed down for generations. After dark, never step into the northern forest. And if you hear the bell, never, ever look out your window. To newcomers, if any had ever found their way to this secluded place, it would have sounded like a folktale. A story told to keep children from wandering off into the woods after sunset. At first, it sounded like nothing more than a bedtime warning to frighten children. But soon, events began to prove otherwise. The elders would speak of it in hushed tones, their eyes dark with a fear that was too real, too deeply ingrained to be mere superstition. They spoke of a time when the rule was broken and the price that was paid. On the night of a full moon, a thick, unnatural mist swallowed the village. It wasn't like the usual morning fog that gently blanketed the valley. This was different. It was cold, heavy, and seemed to cling to the very air you breathed, muffling all sound. At the stroke of midnight, the bell rang. It wasn't the cheerful chime of a church bell. This was a slow, heavy, and unnerving toll. A deep, resonant clang that seemed to vibrate not in the air, but inside your bones. Each strike echoed through the oppressive silence, a mournful, solitary sound coming from the heart of the forbidden northern forest. By morning, a woman had vanished without a trace. Her name was Alara. She was known for her kindness and her habit of leaving her windows open to catch the night breeze. Her family searched in panic, calling her name until their voices were raw. The small cottage was empty. Her shawl was still draped over a chair, and a half-finished cup of tea sat on the table, now cold. There was no sign of a struggle, no broken locks. It was as if she had simply dissolved into the misty air. The villagers, a tight-knit community, banded together to search for her. They combed the edges of the woods, their lanterns cutting feeble paths through the lingering fog. But all they found were faint footprints in the damp soil, leading from her home towards the northern forest. The tracks led to the base of an ancient gnarled oak tree that stood like a silent sentinel at the forest's edge. And then they stopped suddenly. There was nothing else. No scuff marks, no signs of a struggle, no other tracks leading away. Just the imprints of her shoes in the soft earth, ending abruptly as if she had been lifted straight up into the sky. From that night forward, a chilling pattern began to emerge. Every time the bell rang, someone else disappeared. First, it was an old man who lived alone at the edge of the village. Then, a young boy who was known to be a restless sleeper. No one knew where they went, and no one ever came back. The fear in the village grew from a quiet unease into a palpable, suffocating dread. Doors were bolted, windows were shuttered, and a heavy silence fell over the community as soon as dusk began to settle. The sound of the bell became a death knell. Some villagers, driven by a desperate mix of fear and curiosity, decided they could no longer live under its shadow. They gathered, a small, grim-faced group, determined to venture into the forest to uncover the truth. They armed themselves with what little they had. They carried lanterns to light the way, hunting knives for protection, and even old charms and herbs said to ward off evil spirits. They believed that by facing the source of the bell, they could break its hold over their lives. Yet, they too, never returned. The group of brave souls walked into the oppressive darkness of the northern forest, and the woods simply swallowed them whole. The village waited, but they never saw them again. The forest kept its secrets and its new prisoners. Only one object was ever found, days later, lying at the forest's edge where the search party had entered. It was an old, weathered journal, its leather cover damp and warped by the mist. Its pages were filled with frantic, messy handwriting, the ink smudged in places, as if written in pure, unadulterated terror. It belonged to one of the men who had gone into the woods. The entries chronicled their journey into the forest's deepening gloom. The writer described how the trees seemed to twist into grotesque shapes, how the air grew colder with every step, and how the tolling of the bell seemed to come from all directions at once, disorienting them. The final entry was almost illegible, the words scrawled across the page. It read, "Tonight the bell tolls again. We are lost. The sound is closer now, ... Something is coming. If you hear it, don't look out the window. For God's sake, don't look." But what chilled everyone most were the strange, black smudges staining the final page. They were faint, but unmistakable in their shape. They looked like handprints, pressed onto the paper by something long-fingered and not human. It was as if the writer had been interrupted, and the thing that took him had left its mark. The village was eventually abandoned. The weight of the disappearances and the constant, gnawing fear became too much to bear. One by one, families packed their meager belongings and fled, leaving behind their homes, their history, and the valley that had turned into a tomb. But even now, travelers who pass through the remote mountain roads claim that on nights of the full moon, when the fog rolls in, they still hear it. A slow, mournful bell, echoing through the misty forest from the direction of the abandoned, silent village. One group of daring urban explorers, drawn by the legend, once brought a high-sensitivity audio recorder to prove it was all just a myth, perhaps the wind whistling through the old ruins. They set up their equipment at the edge of the haunted forest and left it recording overnight. When they returned and played back the audio, their skepticism turned to ice-cold fear. Their tape held something terrifying. The deep, unmistakable toll of the bell, followed by a dry, raspy whisper that seemed to speak right into the microphone, asking, "Do you hear me?" And then silence. A silence so long, so profound, it felt like someone or something was standing perfectly still, listening, and moving closer to the microphone. The recording ended abruptly after that. To this day, no one can explain why the bell tolls, or what happens to those who vanish into the fog. The village remains empty, a ghost town slowly being reclaimed by the forest that cursed it. Some believe it's an ancient curse tied to the land, a ritual that demands a sacrifice whenever the moon is full and the mist is thick. Others say a dark, lonely presence still lingers in the forest, ringing its bell to lure the curious and the lost, waiting patiently for the next soul to claim. But tell me, if one night while you're alone at home, you hear a distant bell tolling outside your window, what would you do? Leave your thoughts below, and don't forget to come back, because I have more chilling secrets to share, stories you should never listen to alone in the dark.